To think that the citizens in any way are ever going to be able to defend against a tyrannical government thanks to the Second Amendment, that's just not realistic.
Everybody wants to talk about what our founding fathers would say, but I honestly think if they woke up today, they'd be pissed.
As someone who has experienced the trauma of a school shooting and cameras and stuff leave after 2 weeks.
Welcome to Counterpoint, the show where real people with opposing beliefs sit down and have honest conversations. I'm your host, Ryan Price. In today's episode, we're exploring the topic of gun rights, a discussion between pro-gun and anti-gun people.
My name's Chris. I'm a military veteran who believes we need stronger gun control laws.
My name's Imani, and I am pro-gun reform.
Hi, I'm Mollie. I have speech impediment, obviously, as you can tell, and I experienced a school shooting in high school.
I'm Matt. I'm pro 2A.
My name's Drew, and I own a drop-shipping firearms company.
What's up? I'm Tyler, and I co-own Red Flag Armory with Matt.
I'm Bronson, and I am a big fan of the Constitution.
It should be harder to purchase a gun in America. We'll start by having everyone that agrees come up now. Well, I think this is about as core and essential to the debate as it could possibly get. So I think I'll go to the outside and come in and just why do you think it should be harder to purchase a gun?
I'm upfront, I have the opinions that I have because of what I experienced and the trauma I experienced, and I won't pretend that I'm not biased because obviously I am, but as someone who has experienced the trauma of a school shooting and seeing cameras and stuff leave after 2 weeks, and as someone who's seen how it affects everything after those 2 weeks, the biggest thing in my head is I don't want more people to experience what I experienced and my community experienced, and if making it harder to purchase firearms saves a single person from experiencing the things that my community experienced and my town experienced, and to me that would be worth it. I understand that people feel very differently than I do, and that's fine, but that's just my point of view as a person that's experienced the things that I have.
Countries that implement stricter gun laws have less gun deaths and less gun violence overall. So I think we could follow suit, because there's a mass shooting, a school shooting every other week, and we all just scroll past it. It's it happens so often here that we're all desensitized to it. And at some point we need to recognize that it is a problem and we actually do need to do something about it.
How about you?
Yeah, I feel like we should probably, number one, have stricter but also much more training around those that do own guns. That's kind of where I feel like the gun reform should go, that there should be much higher bars to prove your competence with a firearm before you're allowed to use one. I like to think of a country like Switzerland, where everybody has mandated military service and then everyone owns a firearm, but they've been officially trained on it by their military service. They know how to safely store, handle all of it, and I feel like we're pretty Wild West on who we allow to have a gun. We don't know if they pass the checks that we have right now, we don't know that they actually know how to use it, how to do anything with it, and I feel like that's where we have room to really help improve things in this country, is teaching people the proper ways to have firearms.
Okay, I think that's a good time now to bring in everyone that disagrees. I mean, if you don't think it should be harder, maybe do you guys think it's already too hard? Question. That's a question.
So there's already over 20,000 gun laws in the United States. For instance, Chicago is one of the strictest states. It's not the top, it's 3, I might be misquoting that, but the gun homicide rate there is 4 times higher than the national average, and it's still overly strict. So, I mean, how do stricter gun laws really do anything?
15 round mag, yeah. Max you can have, yeah.
What's the max, a standard max?
10.
10.
For Colorado.
Yeah, 10.
10. California, 10.
I think it's one of those things where, as an educator, I was in education for 10 years. I had to go through NICS background checks and all of that to get my teaching license. You're not allowed to teach kids without some background checks, but you go through just as much of a background check every single time you buy a firearm. You go through an FBI NICS check. So if you have any kind of violent history, anything that could come up, mental illness charges, whatever. Domestic, well, that's a big one. Yeah. You're gonna get denied right then and there. Or you'll be put on a wait and then they'll review it, actually take some time to look through what your case actually said, then they'll either deny you or they'll say, oh, maybe it came up as this, but they weren't the one responsible, etc. But the FBI usually is the big one that everybody kind of turns to for background checks. So it's the same way every time you buy a firearm, unless you're doing a person-to-person sale, in which case, if I'm selling to you or any one of our wonderful contestants on the other side, I have to be totally responsible for what you're going to do with that. Like if I sell you, Ryan, a shotgun, even if it's like, yeah, go out and hunt geese with it or do whatever you want. If you use that against somebody and the serial number comes back to me that I sold you that gun, it's on me. I will catch charges for that. I will be in trouble for that. I'm
No way,
responsible
like
for
you
who I sell
can't
it to.
transfer it.
You can. You can go through an FFL and do it that way, and then they get a background check. But most people who sell privately are not going to sell it to somebody they don't know.
It's not like selling your couch.
No. I have never met a single person that did not sell a gun to someone privately, that they did not fully know them, fully know their background, and trust them implicitly. And most people still go to an FFL and do the background check anyway.
We see at least 10 of them a day.
Which is highly recommended.
Yes, very much.
Very recommended.
Unless it's family or somebody that you know intimately their history, you do not want to risk your own
Even then,
legal status.
And with serial numbers and everything.
Yeah.
Take a picture of their ID, you make sure.
And being an FFL, a gun store owner and a gun retailer and a firearms manufacturer, I can tell you that getting a firearm is an FBI check every time. Even when you go and you get a handgun permit to purchase handguns in the state of Iowa, the sheriff handles that. The sheriff then reaches out to the FBI, the same FBI that your local FFL uses. It's all the same system, the FBI NICS check. We are doing the same checks that the sheriff's office uses on you to check and give you that permit. So you're getting a background check with any handgun, with any firearm purchase, even right out the gate by getting a permit. And even though you're not buying a firearm, you're getting a background check just to get the permit to buy a firearm. And then if you don't have a permit and you come to the store and you pick out a gun, you are now filling out a 23 question, 2 pages of forms. If you are, it even asks you if you're addicted to marijuana or you smoke marijuana, you don't get a firearm. So even though you haven't committed no violent crimes, okay, cool, you might do some gummies. Guess what? No gun. You got mental illness, depression. You go to the doctor for it, get some medicine. Your doctor logs that in your chart. No firearm. It may not just be depression. It could be mental illness.
That's more like being committed.
Being committed. If you've been committed, that's mental illness under it, and it can knock you on that. And it asks you that. Have you ever been committed? You ever been, into a mental illness institution? You mark yes, no firearm. You mark no and you lie, you've committed a felony, you go to prison. Just by lying on this questionnaire, you have to go through this. And then if you lie on it, you can get 3 years in prison for it. And that's just for trying to purchase a firearm. And then you sign it and even ask you that you're signing everything that you said is true. And we put you in the system, we run you through the FBI. They delay you, meaning it could take up to 4 days before they decide if they want to give you a firearm. And then if they say on the 4th day, yeah, you can have a firearm. We call you up, say, hey, you can have a firearm, come and get it. Now on the same form, we pull over to page 3 and it asks you, have you done anything bad within the last 4 days since you last answered this form?
I think it's actually 6.
Okay, 6 days. If you have, you got to sign and say, no, you haven't. And if you have done something and you lied, that's a felony. You go in prison. So like it's already strict. And for people to elaborate or comment on it who've never purchased a firearm or even went through to get a permit, unfortunately, they don't really know the stepping stones and the boundaries that they really have to do.
Okay, what do you think?
I mean, they kind of hit it all. Yeah. They literally hit everything. Yeah. From my side, though, like doing everything digitally, right? I'm more the electronic side, where like I would support them with like drop shipping and everything. We have to create integrations with Fastbound, which is a 4473 government verified system. So I'm more on the software side, but everything that they hit is exactly the hoops. And now, if you could imagine, doing this in person is a lot easier than doing it through software. It was not fun.
For a 4473, what he means by that, that's the actual form number of that form you fill out for a firearm. It's called a 4473. That's what the federal government, that's its form number.
Sorry,
for anybody who doesn't.
I should have explained it, but yeah.
No, you
but yeah, I just
making sure, yes.
Yeah.
Because they've spoke earlier about how they wanted to maybe get into it and purchase one. And by educating them like, hey, this is what you're going to run into. give you a heads up, like, do it good. Do it good.
That is the way, right?
Yeah.
So
And it also covers straw purchases as well.
Oh yeah, so if you're purchasing it for somebody else, like if you're filling out the form and you're gonna go give them the firearm, you both now face prison. And I'm pretty sure Iowa has a strict gun law where if you actually do that, you could be held to the same standards as the person who committed a felony with such firearm or anything like that. Like you yourself could get up to 10 years for it.
everything they said is exactly right. I'm more on the I send everything to them to do.
And then it's our responsibility
It is on them
to check everybody, and then before we put a firearm out into the world.
And then any firearm I've ever purchased personally has been bill of sale. So,
All right. So after all of that, I guess my question would be to you guys, like, what is some way that, like, with that process, it could be made harder to get a gun? What are like the first things that come to your guys' mind? Like, who shouldn't be able to get a gun, or what is if you think about like making it harder, what do you guys think could make it harder?
Well, first, I don't like the idea of just owning a gun just because. I feel like eventually we need to be, like, as a society, come somewhere where you have a gun for either hunting or you're, I don't know, involved in the military. But like the average day civilian should not just be having a gun for fun just because they like guns, because guns are harmful. So I feel like eventually we just need to have guns, like, not reasons to like use that force amongst civilians, basically. The type of guns that are allowed to be bought.
Do you think there should be a limit on how many guns someone can own?
Yeah.
What about you guys?
what is that limit?
I mean, like, what would you ever need like 100 guns for? Like, what kind of, you have to be drug dealing at that point in my mind to be like.
I mean, people collect Pokemon cards though.
I guess, but like, I mean, are you protecting the
Pokemon cards?
You couldn't.
There needs to be a limit on how much you can use and what you can use. Assault weapons are like semi-automatic, like weapons that like fire rounds fast. It doesn't make much sense for us to have them. Like if you were talking about hunting rifles, for example, or rifles where you couldn't do as much damage to mass amounts of people, I would see more of an argument for that. But like the fact that you can get like an AR-15, or like, what do you need that for? I just doubt that zombie apocalypse is going to start in the next 3 years. Like, I just.
Have you ever shot an AR-15 at all? Have you ever shot one?
I would never like to.
No, they're
I feel like
super
I'd
fun.
shoot myself in the foot.
Yeah, no, they're not at all. They're
That's
pretty
why you
safe.
need training.
And I'm an
Yeah.
impulsive person,
Yeah.
and I just don't like the idea of being able to. You don't know when your mental health could plummet. Things happen all the time, and don't want to be surrounded with something like that.
Do you own more than one pair of shoes?
Mm-hmm.
Do you own more than one purse?
Yes.
Okay, as a guy, I want to know why you own so many shoes and so many purses.
Okay.
Because I don't own no purses.
I mean,
I
but
don't own many shoes.
I mean, if we look at our outfits, I'm into fashion, like that's my thing. So, I mean, I guess I could understand. Well, no, I can't understand the idea of really being into guns, because it's like how many guns do you need? Like, I mean, like there's a purpose for these, which is walking around.
Mhm.
I mean, but
There's
like
also a purpose
how
for a
often?
pistol. There's a purpose
There's a purpose for a
shotgun.
pistol,
There's a
for
purpose
sure.
an AR-15.
Right. I don't understand the purpose for AR-15. If we could.
Just like it's
Help
hard for
allow
me
me
to
to
understand 15 shoes. Now, I know your boyfriend can make you mad. You could beat him with 8 different boots.
Yeah.
That could happen.
Still would cause a lot less harm than a semi-automatic, like.
Mass-wise.
Well, yeah, like a weapon. Like,
I think it comes down to there's always going to be an ideological divide between people who enjoy going out and shooting targets and having a specific type of firearm for that activity, and people who don't. And that's okay. We're not here to ever try to rewire somebody's brain or anything like that. But my big gripe with all of it is the regulation side of it. Because think about it from a car perspective. You might not like driving a big SUV or a semi, but does that mean that somebody who really enjoys semis or big SUVs should be limited from, because I mean, SUVs kill a lot of people, and especially when you're using them incorrectly, drinking and driving, it's the same way as using a gun incorrectly. You shouldn't be buying a gun to go murder people with it.
Just like the guy in France who took a van and drove it through hundreds of people at a nice parade, like.
Yeah, there's always going to be ways to kill people,
Correct.
Always,
I mean, obviously there's.
but we can make it harder.
Well,
to
you
get
can
at,
take,
especially when these
Guns could be a little too easy.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, especially for like looking at which guns are used the most when it comes to gun violence. That's like a pistol, yeah. And we should have reform on that also, because again, I just like, even though I plan on owning probably some type of pistol eventually, I just would hope that we won't need those.
Almost 60% of all gun deaths in the United States are suicides, and over 50% of those are usually done with a pistol.
That's another like point also, is that like I think it would prevent a lot of suicides, because a lot of people, I know someone who did use a gun to murder themselves for suicide, and I just think having the option of having something so easily and readily accessible, like when you're feeling impulsive, I feel like this causes more people to commit suicide, because like it's different from like taking a bunch of pills. You don't die instantly. You probably sit there. There are people who take pills all the time, and then they call the police because they're like, oh, I actually regret my decision. But like after you pull a trigger, like there's no regretting your decision. That's something that I think only adds to the amount of suicides we have, and I think that would greatly lower the number of suicide rates.
It would deflect it from firearms to something else. You would have more
I feel like
pills.
You could do, like,
People cut
bleach.
themselves in the wrist, sit in a tub. You know, that's an iconic movie scene that really does happen.
Well, yeah, for sure. But a lot of
Like you
people,
said,
but
though,
like,
you can come back.
yeah, and like a lot of the things is like a lot of people like fail to attempt. Like for women specifically, women also have a lot of failed attempts of suicide, but because they're more likely to use a non-loud or extremely like violent method of killing themselves. They're more likely to take pills. They're more likely to not use a gun. And I feel like if guns weren't so easily accessible, the average person, if they really want to kill themselves, they're going to have to go find some pills that can, you know, kill them, or they're going to have to go find a razor and actually have to experience like the pain. With a gun, most people are thinking it's quick, I'll be out and I won't be here anymore. Just, I don't have to think about it.
Quickly, I want to get opinions from you two as well on your side, and see, do you think there should be a limit on how many guns you can own? And then again, like, and also I'll collect from you too, like, what guns do you think people shouldn't be able to own if there is any?
I mean, like, my opinion about it is a little bit complicated, because the shooting at my school, the thing that could have changed it is our, I guess I'm not from here, but our home state's like child access. Like I think in Maryland, like that's where like I'm from, I think like those specific laws, like you stopped being considered quote unquote a child at 15, which, and it's changed, I think they changed it to 17, like because of what happened at my school. But I personally take a lot of issues with like how certain states structure their child access laws, because like if you're 14 or every other context, like you're still a child, except with child access prevention laws, which like doesn't, and like I understand that like parents like take their kids like hunting and stuff, but like child prevention laws supervise access, which like I think if you're a child, like under like all other contexts, like you should still be considered a child in terms of like shooting firearms.
All right. And what about you? Do you think the same as?
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree with what you're saying. Yeah, if you're not old enough to vote, why are you old enough to buy a gun? Like, I understand if you're shooting with your parents. I will say with
the child like prevention laws, like it's not with purchasing it, it's with like password, like your parents like safe and stuff like that.
They still have control of it, and you're only allowed to use it when they say so, kind of thing.
It depends on the state. It's really state dependent, which makes it like tricky across. I'm not sure what it is for Nebraska.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk to a few things that some of y'all all around had said. You know, number one, I wanted to talk about the peer-to-peer sales, because I would bet anybody here $10 that I can find 10 videos of peer-to-peer sales without any paperwork being done in 10 minutes on YouTube. Just because I've seen the investigative reporters go out there and do it and buy guns at gun shows and have people just say, yeah, here, cash, go. So when you were talking about owning a car and the restrictions around that, like, we're in an honor system with guns. You know, with a car, you have to register it, you have to get insurance to be able to license it. We're still on an honor system with guns. Yes, there's all these things where you're felony restricted, you know, like, yeah, you can get a felony, but if the argument is that criminals don't follow laws anyway, then none of those things are actually doing anything to prevent the issue, which is where we go back to the training side of things and needing people to understand how guns are used and the danger of guns, because like you were saying, suicide. I'm a suicide survivor. If I didn't have an armory on post and I had my gun with me at the time, I wouldn't be here. But it was pills and alcohol. And so my liver was like, fuck it, I got this. And so here I am today. That after my first deployment, I had had enough. And if my gun was there, I wouldn't be here. So I do believe that our suicide rates are directly tied to our gun access. If you look at the amount of suicides per capita in the United States versus every other country in the world, we're not that much more mentally unstable than every other country. Like, we're talking orders of magnitude in the like 15,000 times more people are killing themselves with guns here than in like a place like Switzerland that has more guns per capita than us. But they teach everybody how to use those guns. They're strictly controlled. They have armories there for public use. That's more where I see that we need to do. Like, yeah, when I was in the military, I didn't have a gun all the time. My gun lived in the armory unless I had a legitimate reason to pull it out. Was I allowed to have that gun? Damn right. But it was still being properly controlled by the armorer, somebody that was trained on all of the safety protocols. I mean, think of how many people have misfires because they don't even understand how to clean a weapon. How many gun safety incidents have we had because of people just not understanding what a weapon is? Like, that's where I see that we need to do the real work in this country, is teaching people that want to have guns how to properly own them. And yes, we do have mental health stuff, but I don't think that our mental health issues are so much worse than every other country that's why our suicide numbers are so high. I think it's because, like you said, we have so much easier access to it than everywhere else does.
And if I take a gun and I kill myself, where does it give anyone or the state the right to pass a law that stops him from owning a gun because my decision with my firearm? And
that's what we're not talking about.
Well, I mean, so that's what it turns into, is because it's X amount of gun deaths per year in the United States, and that's all these people dying from guns, and so that's why we need to pass more laws. Okay, I'm gone. I killed myself with a gun. Bronson should not be limited, nor anyone in this room, because of my decision. And then it's the same with owning a car. You don't know everything about a car, nor how to drive a car 100% when you buy it. You learn as you go when you get in that car. Yeah, they give you a license. You can pass a paper test. You drive with an instructor. Brake, gas, go, green, red, yellow, caution. I get it. But do they teach you, hey, you're driving in the snow, the back of the car just slid out on a turn at 35. Do you know how to counter steer? Did they teach you that? No, you turn wrong, you fly off the road, you kill the old lady on the other side of the road. Now they got to pass a law that stops us from driving too.
I think something
everybody
that you
learns.
Can interject with that, though, is cars are engineered with the idea of how can I keep you the safest possible. Guns are engineered with how can I be the most lethal possible. So we're talking about things that serve two separate purposes.
Also, it's not just like suicides, it's like guns are used constantly for homicides, and the argument I'm making is that like guns are ultimately causing more deaths than they're preventing them. I think it's not just the argument about like suicide, it's also an argument against like homicide and gun violence in general. We have gun violence happens pretty often in America.
300 deaths a year are homicides by AR-15s.
Or
Rifles, sorry. 1,307 deaths a year are for you falling down the stairs. So you are more likely to fall down the stairs and die than being killed by an AR-15.
But you still are probably more likely to be killed by like a handgun still, like, because that's what people use most. And again, I don't know. Well, actually, I'm gonna leave that later.
Yeah.
And start talking about the Constitution.
Is you doing it to yourself.
Yeah. But also what happens when you take your friend's gun? You don't have the gun, you take your friend's gun.
You stole a gun, so now you've committed a criminal act.
But
Yeah,
again,
but
we're
then you
talking
just
about
get yourself.
You can die however
once
you
again
want.
talking about access.
I'm
If
totally
everybody
okay
didn't
with
have
people
a gun.
Then imagine
you'd be able to steal a
traumatizing
gun.
your like friend.
I could steal a car and run somebody over too.
Yeah.
I could steal a knife out my girlfriend's kitchen and stab somebody.
Or drive
I
your
could
car
steal
into
that
a
chair
pole.
and go outside and beat Tyler because I'm mad at him.
All right, so I'm gonna call this one right here. Teachers should be allowed to carry firearms in schools. We'll start by having the people that agree come up now.
I have a huge asterisk with my answer because there was some bills proposed that said that they would require teachers to carry a firearm, which I think is the worst idea ever. I think probably 75% of the people that I worked with in all my years of education, including my grandmother who did 75 years in education, basically. She was teaching until today she died. There's just not a lot of comfort around firearms. And getting back to training, they don't know how to use them. And the worst thing that you can be in a situation where there are lives at stake is a liability. So the huge asterisk is you could be allowed, but you sure as can be need to make sure that you have the training and everything to back that up. You should not be uncomfortable. You should not be forced, and it should be something that you should pass some stuff before you're able to actually do that, because the classroom setting is a lot more intimate than just being at like Walmart or Target or what have you. I know every student in my room. I knew most of the students in the school. If somebody's going to come after me or my kids, I would have been extremely prepared if I was armed to defend any one of those kids, and I would have died for any one of them too. But handing someone a firearm and saying you need to carry this, which is what some of those bills were. They said we want to have a gun in every classroom. That is absolutely not the way to do it. You need to make sure the person is very comfortable, very well trained.
The teacher's pro-choice on it.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be forced into it. It should be something that they, obviously Bronson being a teacher and a firearm owner, he's kind of trained in it and being a teacher. So his decision most likely would have been opted in instead of being forced to it. And that's the same way, you know. In Iowa, a long time ago, to get a permit to carry, you actually had to go train. You actually had to go to the shooting range, the sheriff's shooting range, and they actually trained with you, and you actually had to pass a certain training, a degree with this handgun before they would actually give you the permit. So every permit person in Iowa, before they did away with this law, every permit person in Iowa who had a permit was actually trained by the sheriff's office. And that's how it was for the longest time, until I think up until the last 10 or 15 years. Then they stopped it. Because if you didn't pass, you couldn't get the permit, and then you couldn't buy a pistol, and it was kind of taking your right away. So I see why they dealt away with it, but I also kind of think it was a bad idea.
That was how mine was when I went in. I had
You had to get the training?
I had to get permit to purchase, and I had to pass an actual test in order to go get my concealed carry permit.
Was it a shooting test though?
It was not a shooting test, it was a written test.
Oh no,
That
they
was
had
the
shooting
only
tests.
thing. Yeah, so I got out of the shooting test, but I still had to be written.
No.
All right. Well, why do you think teachers should be able to carry firearms at school?
Going back to the thing I talked about with the police, right? It's just like, you know, you're going to mess around, bring a firearm. You're probably not going to when you know everyone else has a firearm that has like seniority over you, right? Like, it's people you look up to as a kid. In my school days, I never thought somebody was going to bring a firearm, and they didn't. And unfortunately, you know, I can't say that about every school, but I was in a small town. So I would 100% think that if teachers had firearms, a student's going to go, well, I mean, I'm just going to get smoked. Why would I try? But then there's the flip side of like, maybe that's what they're looking for, right? Like suicide by teacher might become a thing.
Oh yeah.
In that aspect. So it's hard to say, but I do think that numbers would go down. But then, you know, devil's advocate, because we might as well play it here. We're playing the talk show here anyways. What if the teacher loses their mind? Well, other teachers would be there to keep them in check. So it just is kind of that fight fire with fire, which again, yeah, might burn down the whole world, but we're in America, you know. Yeah, let's hope it doesn't, but that's just kind of where we're at as a society, unfortunately. We're not, you know, every other country.
All right. And then how about you on the end before we bring them up?
I feel as a kid, if I knew my teacher had a firearm at that time and someone was going to come in, I wouldn't have to hide under a desk and be worried that they might flip that desk and get me. I'd just be behind my teacher, and if they got me, they got me. And that's how I feel about it. Knowing that someone is there to protect you. It's just like when you're a kid and you have your dad in his room. You go to bed at night knowing your parents are where they're at. You know that they're there. You know that they're going to protect you, so you can sleep a little bit easier. And that's how I view it with teachers having firearms and stuff like that. So.
Okay, and I think that is a good time to bring in the disagreeing side. Okay, so teachers carrying firearms in school. You guys think they shouldn't, and I'm just wondering why, and I guess I can start with you.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I agree with the, like, if it's not forced, then that's a little bit different, but at the same time, kind of from my own point of view as someone who experienced, like, a school shooting, specifically on the shooter at my high school, he was a student who, like, attended, like, the school, and, like, the only thing that I can think of with this whole, like, hypothetical thing is, like, asking a teacher to think about possibly having to kill, like, their own student. I think that's putting a lot of and like, if they choose to take that responsibility, then like, I guess they can do that. But I think even suggesting it creates like a weird dichotomy, like within the school of like, oh, like, well, he chose to do it, but like, I didn't, like, is he thinking differently? I mean, like I just think like we have like enough issues in schools and teachers and stuff as is that I don't necessarily think, especially in today's schools, so that would really do much good. But kind of on the same topic, kind of like a little bit off topic, but also the same, our school had a school resource officer, and he confronted our shooter, and like, of course, like, I'm glad like he chose to do that. But the thing is, he couldn't tell that anything was wrong until the first shot went off, and unfortunately, like, the first shot killed somebody, and like that's not his fault, because like he wasn't like telepathic, he was a human. And that's my thing with like putting firearms in schools, like whether it's through teachers or like school resource officers, it can be something that's there as a backup, but because teachers and cops are humans and they aren't yet able to be trained to be like telepathic, it can't be the only solution. Like, it can be a part of it, and I'm not necessarily completely opposed to that. Just like my own experience, I get very like, ugh, like when people claim like it'll like solve the whole problem, because there's a lot of moving pieces to it.
Well, at your school, did the resource officer, did he stop the...
It was a little bit complicated, because like he pointed it towards the kid, and then the kid chose to like shoot himself like at like the same time. So like he chose to kill himself because he was confronted. So like, I'm glad that he stopped him, but very unfortunately, because he wasn't telepathic, he couldn't tell like that something was like happening until like the first shot went off that unfortunately killed a 16-year-old girl. So
what would be the reason for putting firearms in a classroom besides possibly aid the event of a school shooting? I feel like if that's the only argument we're making, I still feel like this is a really silly question, because I feel like this will cause the media to eventually turn on teachers. I feel like when most people are getting their teaching degree, they're not under the like idea that if I get this degree, maybe one day I might have to put my life on the line to save the children that I work for. I feel like what happens if a teacher now has a gun and there is an active shooter situation, and the teacher thought that they would react a certain way when they were faced with the possibility of death, but they don't end up reacting the way that they want to. Now, I could see this also becoming a thing where people start to demonize the teacher. You could have done something. You had a firearm. Why didn't you do something? Also, I'm not sure if y'all have ever been in a like really bad classroom, but there's been teachers who will start crying and like legitimately having like breakdowns at school, which you were kind of saying. And I just don't think the idea like should be more guns in the school, like especially when we're talking about, again, schools, which usually contain a bunch of children and teenagers are irresponsible. Let's say they know about the gun that's in the teacher's desk. If the teacher would then never be allowed to like accidentally forget her keys on the table or his keys on the table. I think this could just lead to worse outcomes, because if a kid now knows that a teacher is armed, maybe, I don't know, he won't go get a registered gun. He just might end up finding a way to steal it from his teacher. Like, I just don't think this will cause there to be less mass shootings. And I think if anything, it'll cause more gun deaths with putting like arming teachers in schools.
Okay. And how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's relatively reasonable to assume that if there's more guns in schools, there will be more guns shot in schools. And I think that's the opposite of the direction that we want to go for a lot of different reasons. You know, yes, student could get access to it if it's not properly secured, but I think what really, for me, it comes down to the other parts that you touched on of we're not wanting our kindergarten teachers to be killers. Like, that's not the type of person that is drawn to the work of being a kindergarten teacher. And so, you know, I don't think that having teachers with guns is a good route to go. I'm all for the idea of, you know, additional security metal detectors, multi-door access control, security officers. If you want to have armed security officers, fine, but that's somebody that's, supposed to be trained to use that firearm, supposed to be trained to react in that situation. That's what they do day in, day out. Are we planning to have every 2 months teachers go to the range to stay up on their firearm skills? I mean, that's what,
They're
if you
being paid for that.
Right, like if you were in the military and your job wasn't infantry, you still had range time every few months to keep those skills sharp. We can't just hand a teacher a gun and then 9 years down the road when there's a school shooter, expect them to be able to react in that situation. My mom was a teacher for 40 years and I love her, but I would not put a gun in her hands in an active shooter situation. I don't feel like that's what she would be good with, but that's why she was a teacher. She was a special education elementary school teacher because she had that kind heart. I don't think a lot of teachers, like you said, would be able to pull the trigger on one of their students.
All right, well, I think that's a good time to open up the floor to maybe back to see, is there anything in particular that you guys heard that you wanted to address to them?
Oh, yeah.
Them to you?
Definitely. There's a lot of stuff.
Look, mine's really easy. So like that would be an opt-out situation, right? For somebody that wouldn't be in it. So that like they were talking about, and I totally agree with, would be like opting in of like, yeah, I want to be that person. And then second is just tax-wise, like, are we just going to tax pay for more armed guards, or is that just like become a opt-in teacher's responsibility that wants to be? Maybe it's a couple dollars extra an hour or like a salary bump, but I just think of it as in like tax dollars as like a business owner. It's just something we're gonna have to pay for to have armed guards in every school in America, which is just gonna cost all of us more in the end of the day. So that's my only point. Go ahead.
I think definitely being a teacher, you're going to go into it with a certain point that like, after a while, when you get to know these kids, they become your, almost not necessarily your children, but like your children. You see them, you want to take care of them, you want to protect them, you want to make sure they're okay. And if you can use a tool to do that, then you can. If you don't want to, you don't want to. But to not allow them to do that and to basically prevent them from doing that, then
What are you forcing them to see when the time comes?
yes, basically, yeah, pretty much. I don't know where I was going to go with that, but yeah.
I mean, I have a lot from all of them, obviously. This is kind of the question that is the biggest one for me because unfortunately, when I was in school, this was very real. I started with all my education and everything like that in 2012. And so this was after quite a few school shootings had happened. And I remember we had one class about it where we sat down and talked at my university and just said, this is what's, something you need to be aware of. And there's quite a few people that left that room and they did question their decisions on things. Because you're right, teachers are not the kind of people that should be carrying guns. I think if I didn't teach all the social sciences and have this as something that was ingrained in me, having law enforcement as 90% of my family, and a lot of Army vets and Navy and everything like that around me, I think that changed. I'm kind of like the weird 1 in a million unicorn that actually would go out and train, all the time. But I agree with 95% of what you guys said. Teachers are not going to be the ones to be able to pull the trigger in that situation most times. I took many fists for kids over the years. I got assaulted 4 times my last year teaching. And the last thing that the kid, that I took the fist for him because he was literally, and I moved him out of the way and I got socked right in the face and then I got 2 elbows right after that, right across the chin, and permanently messed up my shoulder. So I caught this kid that was like 275 pounds as he's running across to get this other kid. The last thing that he said to me before that was, "F you, man," and he left my classroom and didn't come back for the rest of that semester. But you know what he said to me afterwards? "I can't believe you did that for me." And I literally looked him dead in the face and I said, "You're not going to prison because of me, and I want to see you turn things around." And sure enough, he did. He graduated high school. He got all of his things done. I never in a million years thought that would have happened, but he did. And ideally, we would want armed guards and metal detectors and all of that. That'd be a wonderful addition to every school. I would be so happy. I really would. Because seeing videos online of kids bringing in handguns to school and they like drop them right after the metal detector, and the principal's just sitting there like, "There's a gun on my floor. This kid just dropped it. What am I supposed to do?" He doesn't know what to do, so he's just sitting there standing. The kid picks the gun back up and walks away. There's 2 or 3 videos of that happening, and it's horrifying. Maybe one of the guidance counselors runs after. More security would be amazing, but we get back to the money. There is no money for that because there's so many, and this is gonna be a hot take, there's so many people up at the tippity top that are just grabbing with 2 hands full. I know our superintendent locally is one of those people that she's gotten some heat in the past for different financial decisions she's made, and our school board too. And they may come after me guns a-blazing for saying something like that. It's just, there's too much corruption when it comes to money with a lot of these districts for them to set aside money. And boy, I wish they would, because man, we could pay some people less than $500,000 and put some guards in our schools.
They just canceled what, between 100 and 120 billion dollars worth of funding from the Department of Education. So all they'd have to do is reverse that, and that would pay for all the metal detectors, right?
But how much money from the Department of Ed is actually going to the schools?
Good question.
For
That's
you guys.
a great question. I urge
Aside
everybody
from
to
the
look
money
that up.
involved, who here thinks that adding armed security to every school would be this? I mean, of course, a section of the solution, but would be a necessary part of the solution to end school shootings.
Temporary solution.
Yeah, I'm
I
using
feel like-
section. I'm saying section.
I would feel like that's a temporary solution because I feel like that's literal hell. Like walking into school, you got armed guards patrolling the school like a damn prison. Like I just think like the problem once again is like mass shootings and easy accessible guns, like having metal detectors, making people like wear clear backpacks and like all the other like things to try and prevent like a gun from coming into a school. I feel like that only would be a temporary solution, but I wouldn't want that for long. Like imagine like you go to school and you got guards down that are just like patrolling with their big guns or whatever. I think that's like, I feel like that would be hell for a lot of children. Like, I just don't think they would be like comfortable with the thought like of a bunch of people like again, the metal detector thing. And like, I just feel like that's like, I feel like people would feel like that's infringing on not only their privacy, but also it's just so extreme. And why would we need guards patrolling schools? Also, I wanted to say with like teachers having guns, I feel like bad teachers, because there are bad teachers who do bad things to students, could have leverage on students by having a gun. So
All right,
that
quick
also.
knee-jerk reaction question. If you guys all knew, like, and this is for everyone, I'm gonna go one by one, right? If you guys all knew that there was an armed guard, patrolling your halls, right? While you're in class, let's put yourself back to like 6th grade, okay? One word or the other. Do you feel comfortable or uncomfortable with that?
Comfortable.
Uncomfortable.
Comfortable.
We had them, so it wasn't a problem.
So comfortable?
Yeah.
I mean, what if that dude gets smoked? You know what I mean? Like, then we're screwed again. I mean, if it was multiple. Yeah, if it was multiple, but like altogether,
Yeah,
long as someone is armed, yes, more comfortable, yes.
I mean, like I'm sitting here like because like we had one, so comfortable.
Yeah, like one, but like not a bunch. Like I just think that's crazy.
Yeah, we had one at our school, and yeah, nobody was uncomfortable. He was also the DARE officer, so everybody had grown up knowing him.
Yeah.
Yep.
They were always the coolest.
But I wanted to come back to what you were saying though about the metal detectors and stuff. I don't know if anybody remembers flying before 9/11. Like we all got used to TSA and metal detectors and all that pretty quick. So I think we would be able to get used to it, and it would just become part of life at that point. If it was something where you had a double door access control with metal detectors, X-ray, all that stuff going into schools, it's not gonna solve everything, but I think it would help in a lot of instances. The thing that I worry about with a lot of those kind of programs is I feel like there's going to be a very disparaging way that they're applied. And your inner city schools are going to, get 20 resource officers with all kinds of metal detectors, and then you're going to have, these other schools in different spots where it's pretty lax and they just kind of let things fly. And I don't know how they'll ever be able to equally and non-discriminatorily apply the policy if that is what they're trying to do. Because historically, we've never been good at that.
I can definitely see that.
And then, your comment about the metal detectors and a bunch of guards walking around. You now are sacrificing, with your point of view, you are now sacrificing safety because of an inconvenience. So you'd rather give up your safety for a convenience because armed guards and metal detectors inconvenience you. So you give up safety to not have that. And then, statistically, there are 32 states that allow teachers to carry firearms in schools in the United States. And all of those 32 states and all of those schools that allow it have never had any school shooting deaths. 2 of them have had attempted mass shootings where the teachers stopped them.
I'd have to see that statistic, but as I was like saying before, I just think the idea of like having, again, like even in our school, like North, like the people who graduated with me, we had resource officers in our class, and there was a specific resource officer that was known for using like as much violence as possible when it came to diffusing situations. So again, the idea that these people could end up being our saviors and not the people that are actively harming us is, I think it's a little fairy tale-ish, and I just don't think that we should have, like, again, guards patrolling. Like, again, we should be figuring out how to stop people from wanting to enter a school with a gun or even having access to that gun. But again, yeah, that's all I have to say.
To hit on your point about the fact that you had that resource person use a disproportionate force towards other people because maybe they liked it or whatever, one way to solve that would be mental health checks, background checks and stuff like that, better policing who you hire and doing stuff like that. So I don't think that just because they're there, you should be scared. I would feel more comfortable myself, but I would see figuring out a way and enforcing policies that would help you determine who would be a viable character for that resource guard that would be caring and policing the school and protecting kids.
I was just curious, does anybody else remember pre-Columbine? Was anybody?
I wasn't born yet. So.
Right, like I was fifth grade when Columbine happened. So, I very much remember a stark change. Like before that, we were doing nuclear bomb drills, and then we were doing active shooter drills. We
were Cold War, and then Columbine happened shortly after the collapse of the Soviet Union. We went from Cold War training us, just for nukes. That was actually a real threat. That was more real than anything because Russia actually had a sub out in the waters ready to launch. Like that was a real threat. And then Soviet Union collapsed. The world got saved, yay. And then a couple years later, Columbine happens, and that's like the first big media really just blew that everywhere. Now that isn't the very first school shooting. There's actually very many more before that.
And that's where I was kind of get at, like, what do you think that media influence had on the propagation of school shootings as a whole because it got so much attention?
What the media does best is media does best by fear mongering. It gains its viewership. It gains everything from fear. The more people are scared, the more they're going to be attracted to it. The more they're going to watch it. The more they're going to sell it to you. There's look at there's thousands of schools in the United States, thousands upon thousands. We hear 15 shootings because that's what the media feeds on. So 15 schools out of 3,000. So what is the actual percentage?
One is way too much.
You think one is too much?
One is bad, but let's put in some metal detectors, double doors, maybe add another resource officer. Our resource officer was actually really cool. High five, awesome. There was the DARE officer too. They would actually encourage all of us every time they'd see us in the hallways, like, hey, you have a good day today. They were actually a really good person. And her situation where, she spoke
was tackling people.
Yeah, her resource officer. And that comes down to there is a bad cop. There's good cops and there's bad cops. You might have happened to get one, but in our school, ours was a good one. And then, luck of the draw, it sucks.
The Second Amendment is outdated. We'll start by having everyone that agrees come up now. I guess since you're alone and you sell firearms and manufacture firearms, I guess I'll ask you, why is it outdated?
So my response is most likely not going to be what you guys think. My response is going to be the Second Amendment is outdated because when the Second Amendment was written, everything was an equal playing field between the citizens and the government. We had the same armaments as they have. Now, being said, as we move forward, the government is able to progress and become more advanced in these armaments while the civilians are stuck on still that same level. Full autos, pressers, RPGs, tanks, grenades. The government still keeps advancing in armaments that it most likely can and possibly will use against its own civilians. We've seen it in other countries. While us are stuck on a level that we cannot advance as them, otherwise we get in prison. Well, with the NFA though, we can have machine guns and stuff like that as long as we give the government $200, our own money, then we can move up to a level that they are at, but only with a currency, only with giving them money. So it's illegal for us to be the same as them, but as soon as we give them money, it's okay. So yes, it is outdated, as we are still stuck on the back burner while they continue advance. But when it was written, how our founding fathers wrote it and had it be, we were the same as them at the time.
So we could have, as citizens, we could have the same level of arms as well as the government.
Correct. That's what I believe in.
And do you think now we should be able to as well? If they can, we can?
Well, some people think, well, people shouldn't have machine guns. Well, I'm a firearms manufacturer. I have machine guns. I don't go out and commit mass murders with these machine guns like everybody thinks that people are going to do. There are people who have tanks. We see it on YouTube, private tank ownership. They don't go out and shoot buildings like everybody thinks they're going to do. We are held to a different standard than the government. Everybody worries about the private class, the private citizen, the citizens of this country doing the bad thing, doing the wrong thing, because the government never does nothing wrong, does everything right. They have it all. It's okay. But yet, NFA items, a machine gun, have you witnessed any sort of shooting or killings where an NFA holder took their machine gun and went and shot somebody? Not once. But you'll hear of our government going and shooting and accidentally killing or purposely killing civilians with these armaments.
Okay. Well, yeah, with that being said, I mean, what do you guys think is outdated?
So you talked about the citizens all being on an equal playing field when the Second Amendment was written, but that was the point in time where we still had the 3/5 compromise. And so citizens weren't on an equal playing field. And the reason that we had the Second Amendment initially is because it talks about a well-trained militia. That's because it was the militia's, the intent was to be able to put down slave rebellions as well as to be able to fight off Native Americans. So we need to really have a conversation about what was the intent of the Second Amendment originally. There's a very, very scary racist history to what the Second Amendment really started from. Now, to speak to the idea of trying to fight against the government, nothing that you can own as a person will do anything against a drone at 20,000 feet. The idea of us as citizens being able to fight a government, like what we know about is impossible to fight against. What they don't tell us about that they have is beyond our comprehension. So to think that the citizens in any way are ever going to be able to defend against a tyrannical government thanks to the Second Amendment, that's just not realistic. Having tested weapons in JSOC, there's nothing that we can do as civilians to fight against them. If they want to come and kill us, they will come and kill us. That's how it is. Now, is that great? No. But, what are you going to do about it? You can't shoot a drone down with a 50 cal sniper. Doesn't matter if you have anti-tank armaments. You're not hitting a drone that they can see you off of a satellite feed from 4,000 miles away in a control center somewhere. Like, we aren't stopping a tyrannical government. That shouldn't even be part of the Second Amendment conversation, in my opinion, because it's so far from what we could actually do as a reality. It doesn't make any sense.
Private citizens purchase and own thousands of ex-military aircrafts, F-15s, F-16s. They even spend millions to have Su-32, Su-33 Russian fighter jets. Now, these are jets that have done and proven have shot drones out of the sky. These are also sold to private class in America, American citizens. Yeah, you may need $5 million, but you might be that citizen with $5 million who has that military jet capability to shoot down your drone, your UAV.
And the military is tracking, and the government is tracking that, knows where it is, and if they ever thought you were a risk, they'll probably come and take it, or they're going to bomb you first because they know where the armaments are. I mean, when we're talking about intelligence and the amount of data that's tracked on people, everybody knows where everything is. So,
and then it comes to that playing field where we were earlier, where it's like your uncle and your brother is on that other side. Those military people are civilians. They're just like us. They are our uncles, they are our brothers, they are our cousins. Now, for them to make that decision to kill a civilian is the same decision that someone on the left side, when they purchase a firearm, to kill somebody on the right side.
Okay, I do want to get yours, and then I think we can continue this convo, bringing everybody in.
Oh, yeah. I think the Second Amendment is outdated because guns have evolved since it was the U.S. Constitution was written. Like in 1787, the most common gun used amongst Americans was like a flint gun or whatever they're called. But like from what I've heard, like these are guns that take much longer to reload, like bigger and bulkier and heavier guns. These aren't like guns you really can typically conceal carry. These are guns where you're gonna have to like actually carry them. It's no hiding the gun. Now we have like guns that are like so small, like I could fit it in a coin purse. So like when the US Constitution was written, it wasn't accounting for the fact that guns would become smaller, quicker, quieter, faster, and like, yeah, the US the Second Amendment is outdated basically because we have evolved since then.
Okay, I think it's a good time to bring the rest of everybody back in. Now, the rest of you guys, the Second Amendment is not outdated. I guess, let me ask you why.
I mean, you could go back and say a lot of amendments are probably outdated, right? This was created forever ago. The world has advanced. I just think that it's laws that we abide by, and for us to say one of them is, we're going to have to go change a lot of them. So my whole opinion is that we just kind of fall in line, and that is what we believe in, right? We're American after all, and this is what we're told to follow, and we got to follow the laws. To change one of them, we're going to have to go change all of them. So that's my whole opinion. Everything you guys said is true. Everything you said is true, right? It's the whole world has advanced. So I just believe it's not outdated for the fact of all of them are probably outdated, and we got to just follow them.
Do you feel like if we get into the realm of changing things, then it's never going to happen?
How are we ever going to? Yeah, how are we going to meet in the middle? Yeah, on any of these. Like, it's like, I mean, not to bring in like religion and stuff, but it's like people talk about like the Bible and stuff, and it's here's how it was, here's Jesus was, but like things have advanced now. There's probably like a new times Jesus, and we could rewrite the Testament, but we don't. They already tried that with the New Testament and all that, and we're just living in the old, outdated. But I mean, America is old and outdated, right? We don't want to accept new things, but we accept them every day. AI, I mean.
Okay, and then we'll just go to you guys on the end.
I mean, freedom of speech is still a thing on the internet, but in 1789 they would have no idea what a computer was or what internet could be. I mean, they didn't even have the printing press then. You're still talking about pamphlets and books. They didn't have automated printing presses. They didn't have, even dial-up would have been magic to them. And yeah, we can sit here and debate semantics about how it was written, because the Second Amendment was supposed to be pretty clear-cut, but now we have 15 different lawyers can give you 15 different interpretations of what each word means. Then you're going to have 5 historians come in and say, well, in 1789, this word was more used to define this way, et cetera, et cetera. The whole basis of the whole thing is we can debate it till we're blue in the face, and we're never going to agree. I think we can all sit on that podium and just understand that we're never going to just totally see eye to eye on anything. That's what makes America great. Is about the compromise. You have to be able to look into somebody's eyes who doesn't necessarily agree with you 100% and say, you know what, I think we can meet in the middle, and I think we can make good things happen too. Just the same way as when the Federalist Papers were written in the late 1700s, they were not for a federal government. And that made a lot of these founding fathers put things in place that would check that federal government. And so, yeah, it may seem old and it may be not written as clear-cut as let people just have their guns. I would love if it was written, like for a kindergartner or something like that, just so easy to interpret. But this document is a living document. It still governs every single law in our nation. And there's quite a few that go against it. Matt mentioned the NFA. The NFA is a giant gun registry. They just say the only reason that it is legal is because there's taxes involved, and so it's technically a tax registry. But most of the time when I pay my taxes, I don't have to tell them all the serial numbers that are on every single one of my dollars and where I put it. And so there's a lot of things about it that you could very much say is antiquated, but all the other ones still hold up great. If a cop comes up to you, he can't just take your cell phone because of the Fourth Amendment. You can get on the internet and say, I really hate this or that because of the First. They all have their place, and all of them go to nothing without the second. The second one is the only one that predicates all the others. Because if I could just come to your house and arrest you just like Chairman Mao did, during the 50s, you're not going to say anything bad about me if you haven't got a gun to shoot somebody through the door. And yeah, they got F-15s and nukes and all kinds of crazy stuff. But the Taliban, the Mujahideen, the Viet Cong, they sure did a really good job fighting against some of the biggest militaries in the world that had nukes, planes, radar, crazy communications, night vision, fully automatic weapons, all of our wonderful calibers, armor-piercing ammunition. They killed a lot of people, and we never won Vietnam. I don't know if that's a flash for a lot of people. We lost that war horribly and should have never even been there in the first place. So I don't think you can really say it's outdated.
I think the way it's written, it's really hard for you to try to interpret it any other way, but besides the fact that they need to be protected and that it's there. And I think it's written that way because these men that founded our country realized that times do change, that things do advance and happen, and by writing it the way they did, they allowed some leeway in there for things to change and not to completely disregard what they wanted to happen with the country.
Okay, and then finally, I'll get the final first take.
I mean, I think I take a really philosophical view to it because, like, I'm in law school. I spend like a lot of time with the Constitution, obviously, and I don't think the gun violence problem in this country necessarily stems from the 2A itself. I think it stems from the culture that we've created around it, because we've had school shootings since we've had a country. Like, that's just our history. And I think that it isn't the amendment that's the problem. It's how we've spent the last almost 250 years interpreting it and applying it in specific scenarios, and this culture that we've created around it that, like, we really need to take a very hard look at and change, as opposed to changing the, like, actual text of the Constitution. I don't think that would really do anything, because at this point, like, people already have firearms. Like, that's not going to change if, like, we just take away, like, the 2A, like, so.
Okay, and I had to cut you off earlier to get everyone else in. It seems like you've been wanting to say something since then, so I want to just see what you want.
When the Second Amendment was wrote, and you mentioned, you know, smaller firearms and stuff, there's a firearm called a blunderbuss that pirates are well known for using, and it was a little pistol, and it had a little trumpet at the end of it, and they would pack it full of rocks and nails, and they'd hide it in their shirt, and they would shoot people in the face with it. And it's real small. Like, it's probably about a good size of a modern handgun today. It's almost the same size. And they had it before the Second Amendment was even written down. It's been around way even before 1776.
I mean, that's cool, but again, I just don't know if they would have writ the Constitution the way they writ it if we had, like, again, semi-automatic guns, and if they could see where the state of America would be today with so much gun violence, like, consistently. Yeah, like, especially because, again, the most common used gun in America was, like, Flint Lockwood guns or whatever they're called.
I think if our founding fathers woke up from the grave and looked at us now, I think they would actually be very disappointed in us as people. And I think they would actually try to rally us all together to stop the current situation that we have with our government. You got to remember, they started a whole war to take over a whole country over a tax on tea.
3%.
3%. And now here you are as a private business owner, 36%? Is it 36% of your income? You make 100,000, you got to give the government 36,000.
Yeah.
Like 36%. Now remember, they flipped the table, started a whole war with another country, and over 3% on tea. I think everybody wants to talk about what our founding fathers would say, but I honestly think if they woke up today, they'd be pissed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure.
They'd say, "Get your AR-15s. Let's get them new
A few
ones."
of them would probably want me as a slave again. So, you know, if they'd rose from the dead, if we really want to bring it up, you know, that was a thing in the history of America for a while. So, you know, I just feel like obviously I don't really care about the founding fathers now. Like, they're dead. Yes, they were important, but, like, they're gone.
They gave you the life that you have today, just like me.
And then do we rewrite them all? Like, that was my point. Like, it's not just 2A we're worried about, right? We should, like, be worried about all of them, right?
Yeah, we should.
I mean,
Why the f are we following laws that are 250 years old that, you know, they
yeah,
don't
like,
understand the context of the life we live today, right?
we feel like it's not working.
Like you said, it's a living, breathing document that's supposed to, I mean, that's the most American thing about America, is that our government is a system that we all should feel that we have the power to make changes in, you know, like, that's the spirit. Like, I felt that I was scared by that statement of, like, oh, this is the way the laws are written, so we need to follow them.
Right.
Like,
I mean, the 13th Amendment says that, like, slavery is still, like, acceptable as a form of punishment, which I think is ridiculous. Like, just because the document's old and we used it as a ground to build something doesn't mean we can't fix a foundation of something. Like, I think that's silly to not, like if
We would have a whole lot of amendments.
Correct.
Yeah, we would.
I feel like I feel like obviously we would never be like, let's rewrite the whole document today. We'd probably go like one by one and be like, hey, we'll vote on this, and I don't know.
Well, you have to have a constitutional convention, which requires at least 37 states that have to sign
Trying to
on
like
to
picture
ratify.
that happening
So, I mean,
today. I'm
There's
like,
just
that
no
would be
way.
such a-
We're so 50-50.
Yeah, but the Constitution says slavery is a punishment. What do you think prison is?
Yeah,
Prison is a
slavery.
privately owned prison, and when you're in trouble and you get sentenced to prison, you go there and you work. You stitch pants. You
And that's where
make things
over-policing
like that.
The system
And that's
is
why
that
we
is
have
not
such high
good.
recidivism rates. If you look at like Scandinavian countries where they actually teach them life skills and like, hey, instead of sewing pants, you're going to become a welder, and we're going to teach you how to manage your finances and so that you don't get into those positions where you feel like crime is the only option
So
for you.
as a person who commits a very violent crime, murder, child molestation, they should be taught life skills to be like the best amongst society, because we really want them living amongst us.
Most people
like that
in
that's
prison
okay.
aren't there for violent crime. They're here for petty crimes, which is like
That
again,
is correct.
which is like another thing. Like I don't think somebody's life should be destroyed because they stole something. I don't think somebody's life should be destroyed because they partook in a few drugs. I don't feel like somebody's life should be like taken from them, and they're able to use slave labor, extract slave labor from these people. When you have people that profit off the prison system, you keep feeding the prison system. So you plant drugs in places that you want people to have them, and you also make it easier to do crime in those areas, and you over police those areas, and that leads you to having a prison population that never goes down. We have like I think we have the largest prison population in the world.
Combine the rest of the world.
Yeah, we have so many prisoners here.
But with the whole child molestation thing, that's why 2A is beautiful, right?
Yeah, I mean, child molester will do less time, and I understand. Will do less time than someone who did marijuana. And to me that is wrong. I completely agree. But to say, hey, let's try to give them some life skills or teacher skills, and then like you don't really want a person like that in a school. Like
Depends who it is and what the crime. But I mean, I think that
I was just
I get what
strictly
you mean.
reference
I
to
get
the
what you mean,
child
sure.
molester. Like you don't want them in the
for sure. But I think it comes down to, do we want to have a correction system or do we want to have a punishment system?
Exactly.
Like, do we want to correct behaviors and return these people to society, or do we want to throw them away and say, you're no longer allowed to be a part of us? Because if we put them into a system where the only skills they're taught is how to get away with, not getting caught by authority because that's what they have to do to survive, that's what they're going to then turn to on the outside. And so like, if we're not focusing on how do we make these people productive members of society, they're never going to be.
Now, I don't mean to steer it back because we're obviously getting into prisons, and that would be a wonderful episode. Yeah.
And then it's going to turn into the government real quick.
Yeah. So I think that would be a great one because there's a lot to say, and I think we would have 99% just total agreement.
Yeah. Look, trust me, prisons, the way they do prisons is wrong. Privately owned, making money off people, slaves. I get it, and I get it.
So then my question though is, should people get so heavily in trouble for very small, teeny tiny violations? Because the ATF, as I think maybe a lot of people don't know, really love the tiny violations, and they love to
easy to
bust
get a
in your
felony.
door at 2:30 in the morning and shoot you in the face or do whatever, because they're a big federal body of uncontrollable people.
And that's where it went back to my thing is like, hey, the government can have machine guns. You can too, as long as you give them $200. Well, let's say I don't want to give them $200 and I have a machine gun. I get 10 years in prison, or I get them kicking in my door, shooting my dog and killing me over it. And it all could have been prevented if I would have gave them $200. So that's
Even just the suspicion, because there's been multiple people that they say, well, this person
was it Ruby Ridge that was suspicious?
That's a whole other thing. If you
Oh,
look up
sorry, I
Ruby
shouldn't have
Ridge,
took it too deep.
Yeah.
Right?
It's just one of those things where somebody can be violating the law and not realize. Again, there's 20,000 gun laws. There's so many, and you have to be aware of them all the time, regardless of what you're doing. And so whether you or somebody in your family, whatever, violates one of these laws, it's instant prison time, and they don't mess with you at all. They're willing to make an example of you no matter what. And it leads more to the same issues that we're talking about, though, is you have people who are like, well, how am I going to just tiptoe around this? How am I going to survive in this climate? And then I've also talked to people that they inherit stuff that was never registered and they have to destroy it. And where is the fine line between, this beautiful document that we have that has given us so many rights and that was well thought out and, all of this, where does that end and where does the 6 billion other laws start? And how are they compatible? Because right now they're not. And I think we pretend like they are. And it's wonderful to have discussions like this, where we're all kind of finding some common ground and, and talking things out. But I think, boy, it seems like on our side of the aisle, there's not a lot of people fighting for us. It's a lot of people who are just like, oh yeah, just take the guns away because that'll solve the issue.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't. And then you have places like Chicago and DC, and it just gets crazier and crazier.
That was one thing I wanted to bring back was when we had talked about Chicago earlier and how, yes, they do have extremely strict gun laws and then also high homicide rates.
4 times the national
But the
average.
majority of those homicides are not being committed with legally purchased firearms. Most of those are firearms that are being smuggled through the black markets. And that's where we need to look at just the flood of manufactured weapons that we have. I mean, how many guns are there in America for every person? If we're just talking quantities, how many there are, there's no possible way that we can realistically expect to keep track of them all with how many there are. And so it's so easy for them to get into the wrong hands because there's not enough supply chain control.
Gun violence is more of a mental health issue than a gun issue. We'll start by bringing up everyone that agrees now. When it comes to the gun versus mental health, why is it a mental health issue, not a gun issue?
Honestly, for someone to think I'm gonna grab a gun and I'm gonna go kill somebody, I think that's a mental problem, a mental capacity issue, a mental illness. Like, who in the right mind wakes up and thinks I'm gonna pick up a pistol today and I'm gonna go kill somebody? You're already at the point where you need help. Not just a firearm help where we just take your firearms away and then send you back on the road, because obviously you are at the point where you're trying to harm another human being. And then when you go see a therapist, they ask you, are you thinking about harming yourself? Are you thinking about harming someone else? So a therapist wouldn't ask those questions if it wasn't a mental issue. So to just wake up and think that, to me, that's a mental illness. Now, to base it around firearms, I think that's wrong, because way back in the dawn of time, Cain killed Abel with a rock. There were no firearms, yet he woke up, chose to do that to his own brother. Grab a rock and kill him. Problem in his head. Firearms didn't even exist then, so you can't even blame the gun then. And if somebody wants to hurt another human being, we see it in prisons. They take their spoon, melt it into a knife, stab and kill somebody. No firearms, even remotely around to this prisoner. The UK, where they don't have firearms, stabbings are through the roof. They're killing each other with knives, kitchen knives. UK had a ban on kitchen knives, to take it from the store to home. It had to be in like a lockbox. It's a mental problem in our own heads.
All right, and how about you guys?
I have never had a single firearm get up, walk out of my house, and murder anybody. They kind of just sit there unless you do something with them. And just like a hammer, we talk about rifles a lot and assault weapons and all of that. Assault weapon is just a media term, but assault rifles in general, according to 2024 statistics, or even back to 2019, because 2019 they broke it down really well for the FBI, about 1/4 the amount of deaths happen with rifles than blades, knives. You have significantly more people killing each other with knives. And then you add in blunt objects, etc. Rifles are a very small number compared to everything else, but it's always the first thing that people want to regulate. Because handguns, they've got the minimum age up to 21, et cetera, et cetera. And there's been a lot of debate about raising rifles up to 21 too, and that's its own thing for its own time. But I just find that a lot of people, if you're willing to threaten somebody or seek out violence, you're going to do it however is most convenient. And sometimes it is, somebody chooses a gun because it's there, or they steal it, or what have you. But other people choose pressure cookers and bombs and cars and vans and all kinds of other things to murder other people. And you have to have a lot of hate to do something like that. And I think just a lot of division and a lot of hate has led to all this stuff, and it's all up in people's heads,
Okay, and then I'll just collect it from you at the end there.
I think if you go back to, like, even in the gladiator days, you see people that are just so obsessed with violence. And during those times, they used swords, clubs, any sort of things they could do, pitted you against lions and other stuff along those lines. And you didn't see them blaming the sword or anything like that. You saw this big burly man or whatever attack these things, and people just went wild over it. It's a mindset. It's that people love seeing it, or can love seeing it. And then when you see that in the media and everything plays on and on and on, you sit there and you think, oh, I can do that too. I can do that too. Oh, I can't get a gun. Let's just get a car and go smoke a crowd. You know what I mean? It's not the tool that does it. It's you that do it. You are in charge of your own actions, your own facilities. You choose to do that if you commit a crime or hurt someone. That's your choice. That's all in your mental.
Okay, and I think that's a fair time to bring up the side that disagrees. Why is it more the gun than maybe the mental health of the gun user?
I mean, I'm not sure if I would use the word more, because I think, like, to me personally, it's this thing of like two things can be true at once. Like, maybe this is kind of a contentious example to bring up, but with like the person that shot Charlie Kirk, like obviously he had mental issues. I think that's like clear, but push past his security to like stab him or something like that, which I don't think he would have succeeded at. He chose to have his little like sniper like position and shoot him. And like I've been trying to think of like how to like phrase this, how like I want to phrase it, but like it's a combination of both.
Let me see if I can dive into kind of what you're saying. Are you kind of saying that there are guns, right? The two things can be true at once. In your analogy you gave with the Charlie Kirk example, you're saying the fact that the person could get a gun is why that happened versus...
I think so, absolutely, yes. Like I don't think like he could have tried to like push past his like in-person like security and like stab him or something, sure, but like I don't think he would have succeeded at that. I think he succeeded in like the thing that he like chose like to do, like because he chose to shoot him.
Okay. And what do you guys think?
I'm also, like, I agree. I think I'm on the fence about it too, like it being a mental health issue and not a gun issue. But I think it's equal. But I feel like I don't think mental health is actually really taken that serious in America. And healthcare is also extremely expensive to afford in America. So a lot of these people probably won't have access to talking to a psychiatrist or someone that can help them or diagnose them or let them know and be aware that they have like violent tendencies or put them on any type of medication that could dull the violent urges. Like I think it's a mixture of both. The guns being there just amplifies it again, like more, because again, like people who are mentally ill who want to hurt other people will find other ways to do it, but it's just with a gun, it's easier to actually like fatally kill someone and to do it on a mass number than compared to a knife or the other examples that we were giving. Like you're not going to be able to probably stab like 500 people and do really bad damage. I think over 500 people were shot at that Las Vegas shooting when they shot into the crowd. You're just not committing that much like harm with a knife. Like, and I feel like a few people can overpower some crazy person with a large knife. Now, you try to overpower somebody with a large gun, you're likely gonna probably like die. So
I mean, you could do it with a bomb or like anthrax or something like that, though.
a bomb.
You could.
Or you can wake up and just say, I'm not gonna do this today. So Charlie Kirk would have never happened. Las Vegas would have never happened.
That's not how mental...
Getting a gun is harder than telling yourself no.
Okay.
Yeah, as a former mental health provider, I'm not going to take that rabbit hole, but I would definitely push back on that in a lot of ways. To the nature of the question, I do believe mental health plays a large part. However, like you were saying, I believe that the access to something that has the ability to mass casualty event generation, that's something different that, you know, guns provide that a knife, a hammer doesn't. Oh, okay, you want to make the argument, bomb, car, those are things that you can't do in a crowded movie theater with anywhere near the ease that you can sneak a gun in. You know, you're not taking a pressure cooker bomb into a movie theater. Somebody's going to think it's a little weird if you have that stuffed under your shirt. You know, I think the ease of access to such a dangerous tool greatly increases the amount of violence and damage done. It's again, like we were talking about, it's an amplifier. So when people want to do violence, it allows them to amplify that violence much easier than most other tools that we have readily accessible.
Okay. Let me ask you guys this. Something I think Charlie Kirk was like famously known for saying was that, like, you know, gun deaths are something that we're going to have to put up with if, like, you know, that's what we have in our society. And I could be completely misquoting it, but that's kind of the gist. And what my question is like, his assassination, do you guys think that that is a result of Second Amendment, or do you think that is a result of mental health? In general, do you guys think there's ever a time that we're going to get to no gun deaths?
I don't think we'll ever get to no gun deaths. I think that it will just evolve, just like it did in the UK. You got vans, bombs, knives, all that, things like that. But going off of the Charlie Kirk quote, I understand his sentiment, and I've heard it taken out of context and done differently or rephrased differently many times.
Do you think mine was?
I don't think so. I haven't.
Pretty close to what
Yeah,
he said.
Okay,
I haven't
wasn't
watched the
trying
exact
to.
clip like today, but I think his sentiment, or what he meant, was that having the freedom to defend yourself was more important than even a small loss of life, because if you don't have the means to defend yourself, that loss of life is going to grow exorbitantly. I know that.
I can greatly agree with that.
Yeah, I know that Kash Patel and a few people at the FBI have commented in the last couple of weeks, and it made big headlines in the firearms community, that they felt that the statistics did not back up how many firearms actually prevent crimes, that it's not really represented well enough in the descriptions of all of their studies and whatnot and the information that they have gotten. It's one of those things where you're never going to diffuse the division that already exists. And Charlie Kirk specifically, you have mental health plus all of this brainwashing and division and all these things that people are just constantly being told, along with this whole other element, which is echo chambers. You know, somebody talks about doing something terrible on the internet, and it's in a Reddit forum or Discord or whatever. And I think there was, how many, like 20 people in the Discord with this young person that killed Charlie Kirk, and talked about all the plans and everything ahead of time. And any one of those people could have come forward and been like, hey, this is really bad. We shouldn't just be assassinating people. But when you're in this little echo chamber, a bad idea gets echoed enough times that they're like, whoa, wow.
Yeah,
It's not such a great, terrible idea.
This is also something that, again, social media like amplifies, but like there are so many Twitter and like Reddit spaces where you will see people that like say some of the like most heinous things. And I think guns are going to cause more problem over time, especially if we, I feel like, don't start some type of reform somewhere. Because again, people are getting more radicalized, and people are in echo chambers where their algorithms are feeding them content that enrages people. And I feel like the longer this keeps going with like the development of AI, possibly like fake AI videos, like this is only going to add more fuel to the fire. I don't feel like we need to fight fire with more fire.
Yeah.
We need to eliminate the chance of there even being fire there in the first place.
But how does taking away firearms do that?
I mean, just take away like a good majority of them. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, obviously. I just don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. You're going to do less damage with a hunting rifle than like a handgun, like a pistol. Some guns we just don't need. And if we're seeing that handguns are consistently the problem when it comes to most like homicides or suicides or mass shooting events, we should probably lower how many Americans have access to those, or the fact that there even is access to them in the first place.
But how do we do that?
I mean, we could look at other countries like the United Kingdom, for example, South Korea, Japan. These are places where they implement very strict gun laws, and their margin for gun deaths is like much lower than ours is. So it's like, again, in the United Kingdom, you can still get a gun, but you have to have a reason that you need the gun. You have to get a license approved by.
Culture's completely different though. Like,
I mean, I get our
Japan is,
culture.
like, very honor based. Like, they're very, like, their prison system. If you go there, you have inmates that police themselves to prevent you from fucking up, or to prevent you from doing and breaking the rules, because they all get in trouble. And there's all sorts of things that their cultures are completely and utterly different than ours. We are not as honor based as other countries are, unfortunately.
How about
when it comes to
Australia?
that. I'm sorry. So
How about Australia?
Australia? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, what about their massive buyback program that they did, and the drastic reduction in gun injuries, deaths,
Well,
everything
of course,
after
their
that
firearm
buyback
reduction
program.
went down because there was no more firearms, but their bludgeon deaths increased, their knife deaths increased, their vehicle homicides increased. It switched.
But
so
not to the level
congratulations,
of the firearms,
you made the
right?
you made the firearm numbers go down, but you increased everything else. So
but not
this-
at the same.
Not at the level that like you dropped more firearm deaths than you added other violent homicide
almost
deaths.
60% of our firearm deaths are self-inflicted. They're not homicides.
That's still a problem.
Yeah, that gets into
So
like
I
we
mean,
talked about earlier
if
with
I'm gonna kill
you
myself,
can get a second chance.
I choose to do that. It's like an intrusive thought. Okay, that's where mental illness comes into play. Do you guys act on all of your intrusive thoughts? You don't, because you tell yourself no, and you tell yourself that's wrong. So when you chose to wake up and shoot Charlie Kirk, you can tell yourself no, and that won't happen. It's not the firearm that made you do it. It wasn't the fact that he had access to a firearm that made him do it. He decided he was going to get that firearm and do that. He could have stopped at any moment, and that would never have happened. Just like intrusive thoughts amongst all of us. When I follow Tyler walking down the stairs, and sometimes he makes me mad, and I think, man, I could kick him down these. I don't, though. But yes, it's in my head. I tell myself no, because it's wrong. It ain't right. I could get in trouble. I say no. I don't act on it.
People who aren't mentally ill have better impulse control though. So like
So
again,
it's
if I
mental
get
illness.
well for sure. But then access to the gun. Like now I've had a mental break and now I want to get a gun to harm a mass amount of people, and I can.
But the question was, is it a firearm problem or a mental illness problem? What you've described as a mental illness problem.
Well, that
So-
makes kind of a chicken and an egg argument to a degree.
Yeah, so I mean, at the point, if you solve the mental illness, then that person isn't going to grab the firearm. I mean, I've been mad in my life. I'm sure all of you guys have been mad. Have you ever been mad enough to the fact that you got so mad you shot somebody in the throat? Have you ever been that mad? Like, no, yeah, you've been real mad to the point where you probably broke your own stuff. You might have broke somebody else's stuff. Like, you've been that mad, but no matter what, it got to the point in your head that you didn't think about you were going to go kill that person. Why? Because you know. So if you are stepping to that point where you feel that you are mad enough that you should just start killing people, you are mentally unstable
And barred from buying a firearm.
and barred from buying a firearm, because a doctor would actually put it on your record and it would pull up in
If
your
you've been
background
to the
check.
doctor, if you had enough enough medical access to be able to see a doctor before. A lot of healthcare plans don't even include mental health coverage.
And a lot
which is very unfortunate. It
Five-year-old,
should.
a 5-year-old knows right from wrong. So does a
all.
40-year-old person.
again, like especially I think, I don't know the statistic for it, but I think also men are more like for guns.
I'm pretty sure the last couple of years there's been more female purchasers than male purchasers.
Purchasers, but if you look
First-time
at
buyers.
committers of violent crimes with said firearms, men, we win by a lot.
That's because every man is not calling the police on his girlfriend when she slaps him, when she hits him with something, when she throws something at him.
Yeah, we
when
were
she
talking
breaks
just
stuff.
firearm crimes.
But there's a lot of women on male violence crimes
Sure.
that actually is not reported because we don't say anything.
Sure, but that's
So
that's going down a
statistically,
different
it's skewed
thing.
into one direction, making one sex more horrible than the other because the other one isn't reported. And it's the same with the gun
I don't think
statistics.
you're not reporting gun violent crimes. I
Well,
don't think there's a good
there's-
way to hide those.
There's more firearms.
I've actually had a customer come and tell me that his fiance at the time pointed a gun at him, and he did not report it because she would have just made it all about him, and he would have got arrested.
But again,
I've
that's,
actually
that's
had that
pointed,
physically been
so that
told.
wouldn't have shown up in the statistics of violent crime regardless.
It's just like guns. Like we know statistically how many gun crimes there are because it's reported. But what's not reported, like he stated with Cash Patel, what he said, we don't know exactly how many it deterred because it's not reported, because it's not counted on.
He's sold to the highest bidder.
He's the head of the
Cash
FBI.
Patel,
Sold to the highest
But-
bidder.
ridiculous.
But I wouldn't go into a police station and go shoot it because I know they're going to shoot me. So guess what? That deterred that crime. That's a statistic that was not
Did
counted.
you know there's not a statistic stating how many illegally used guns were used in crime? There is not a statistic. I actually looked it up today. It's not there.
You know what else isn't a statistic? How many people are killed by cops with guns?
Actually, reported homicides is 2 to 3%. I looked that up today.
They also don't prosecute cops for homicides. Like, I think since, like, 1995, there's been, like, only 35 officers who were, like, I don't know
But
the
that's
exact
not a law-abiding citizen problem. That's a state and government issue.
That's true.
When you guys
Correct,
pass
but
laws on
also
these guns,
we've
it affects us
definitely all seen a
law-abiding
video
citizens. It
of
doesn't affect officers.
of a trigger-happy cop So it's like, again,
But that goes back to the fact of like their training and everything. Like, why is it so easy for them to become a cop, but to become a lawyer, you have to do multiple years and degrees and everything to actually practice the law. You know what I mean?
Or
Like,
that cop decided I'm going to kill him, but then again, he could have just told himself no, and then that wouldn't have happened.
or maybe if he was trained better.
And he is
put in the
trained and
system.
he is mentally stable. He has a job within the state as a protector of the people, so you would think he'd be mentally stable. So if he said, you know, I'm going to kill this guy, and yeah, I'm a cop, and he had no probable cause to even do so, maybe that cop had a mental problem. It ain't a gun problem because all cops have guns, and not all of them are going around shooting everybody.
they're also hiding evidence from like the mass public. Also, they do that quite often.
But
Yeah,
that's
it's- I mean, like your buddy
1%.
shouldn't be investigating
If that.
your.
It's
That's
that was
crazy.
I wasn't exaggerating.
We're gonna draw this one down the middle, and I'm gonna ask you guys something that just makes sense to ask for this, because I think a lot of people have brought this up. The number one fear for like people that like maybe if there's gonna be guns taken away, there are people that say like, okay, if you take all the like people's guns away, you're just taking the good guys' guns away.
You are.
And the criminals are going to get them. My question originally was going to be, not knowing if that's true or not, my question was, are there reports, like you mentioned in Chicago, like how much crime with the guns there are? Is there? Does anybody know how much is being done by people that are like the rightful owner of their firearm and legally, you know, obtained their firearm? Is there no statistics on that? Because that would be a way to pinpoint.
Well, if you're-
that would be a way to pinpoint, like, okay, what is happening? And I just think that would be interesting.
By you having almost by you having a gun inside the city limits of Chicago, you're a criminal. Regardless if you're a nice, cool person who's a law-abiding citizen, there are state rules, city laws within Chicago that kind of forbid that. So if there's any firearm in there committing the crime, it's by a criminal solely, not by a law-abiding citizen. And a law-abiding citizen, if they're abiding by the law, they don't have a firearm to defend themselves or to stop that criminal, because they're abiding by the law that was in place within Chicago that prevents them from having that firearm. So they're abiding the law. The one who's not is the criminal.
But that's because we don't have a nationwide like ban or
but that
restriction.
proves the point that laws only affect law-abiding citizens, because he's following it. Now he don't have a firearm, but the criminal is not.
Well, no.
So you pass the law, he abides by it, yet the
because
criminal
way
still commits it.
It's enforced. It's like, again, there's stricter gun laws in Chicago, but all the states surrounding them, what the gun laws look like over there.
Well, the crime is within the area of laws that says there's no guns.
Correct. So they
there's
probably
not the
didn't
crime
buy the
outside
gun.
where.
So they probably didn't buy the gun in Chicago. If it's hard to get a gun in Chicago, they likely didn't buy the gun from Chicago.
Or they got it from another criminal in Chicago.
Well, if they bought it at a store, especially when we're talking handguns have to be bought in the state that you reside in. You cannot buy a gun.
Oh, don't Illinois have a special card?
It's a
that you
FOID
actually
card.
have to-
Yep.
I actually had to deal with it when
You have
shipping
to
a
pay
firearm
it
to
and do
that
it and
state.
do all that. So just to even have a firearm in Illinois, it's a handgun. It's actually very hard, way harder than Iowa, way harder than Nebraska, I can tell you that. But I can tell you, every crime committed in Chicago with a firearm is by a criminal. No law-abiding citizen can stop it because they're abiding the law. They can't have a firearm. They're abiding the law.
Yeah. And
So when you pass another law,
That's we got to get rid
yeah.
of.
So we're gonna pass another law to already affect the guy who's.
this is where
Everybody's guns, but the black market still exists.
So what you do is you take the circle of Chicago and you pass more laws around it. You expand that circle. So now all that crime is now happening in a bigger area.
just don't
And it's
think-
gonna go across the whole country.
I just don't think if there's a gun in a situation, the solution is another gun. Like if someone has a gun, like this isn't a Wild Wild West movie. Like this isn't. There's only enough room for one of us here. Like it's like if someone pulls a gun out on you, like the idea that you're gonna be able to like defend, like it's just like this is not an action movie. This is like real life, and I just doubt people really react like this in situations where there's a gun involved. And I think adding another gun only escalates the situation because
Then
now
why
you
call
have
police
one
officers
person
that have
shooting.
guns?
Now you have
Why
one
call
person
people
shooting,
that
and now you have a
help
few
you
people
against
shooting.
someone that has it?
Who, if they start running around, how do you prevent a shootout now?
There's 12 of us in this room. There's 12 of us in this room. We are all law-abiding citizens besides this gentleman back there. He pulls out a pistol with 15 bullets. He's gonna smoke all of us. You know why? Because we abided by the law and didn't bring our gun here.
He's not gonna get all of them.
But there's a chance. If that's the only exit, he might just get us all. But if that's the only one,
I'm just saying though.
okay, but listen, but if you have a firearm, he has a firearm, and he has a firearm, he pulls out his gun and starts shooting him. We now have 4 people who could draw and stop this before that guy gets killed, that guy gets killed, he gets killed. The chances of stopping him are greater if we are law-abiding citizens with a firearm. But since we don't have them, and he pulls his, he
very, very just succinctly though that we shouldn't have guns around. Like
then he pulls out a knife.
Nobody's even
Then he
having
pulls
this
out a knife.
conversation if they're not here. Like that's where I go back to Switzerland again. Have as many guns as you want, but guess what? You got to store them in the armory, and the government knows every time you check them out. So they know why you're getting them. They know you're trained to use them, and they know what they're being used for, and they know where every gun is in their country at any given time. And you have the choice still to own as many guns as you want. You just don't have them in your fucking pocket. Because that's, again, the proximity to these guns is where the violence comes from.
And it's like he stated about Japan. We don't have that in America. We don't have that, that connection to be.
But we're acting like we want to, though.
Like, yeah.
Like we pretend like we want to be that militaristic society without doing the hard work of going through the training and ensuring people understand the true ways to properly respect a firearm. Like we need to up-level our culture.
This has been another episode of Counterpoint. If you enjoyed it, make sure to let us know by hitting the like button and subscribing to catch all the new episodes. If you would like to be on Counterpoint, our casting form is in the description. Make sure to comment down below which topic we should cover next.